Today we are doing Adapting to the New Business as Usual. We've done this webinar, it's part of our free education webinar series that we're doing every 2 weeks on a Thursday going forward for the rest of this year. And it's really to help people dealing with change and how much change we're having to deal with right now. We've been through quite a busy period. So the idea is for us to really help you to get through this next bit, this sort of post-lockdown but not really out of lockdown part of running a business. So I'm going to crack on and get stuck in.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Richard. I'm a trainee accountant at Panthera, and I'll be your moderator today. First thing I'd like to do is take you through some Zoom controls. So for those of you who are new to the webinar environment, these are the Zoom settings. On the bottom left, you've got the audio settings where you're allowed to select and test your speakers. And then towards the middle, there's a Q&A button, and you can use this to submit questions, which we'll answer at the end of the webinar. If at any point you need to leave, then there's a button at the bottom right for leave meeting. And then if you need to catch up on anything, just send us an email and we can come back to you. I'd like to introduce today's presenter, Tori Wagg, Director of Panthera Accounting. Welcome, Tori.
Thanks so much, Richard. And if you've got any questions whilst we're going through, Rich will be able to help us make sure we capture those as we go, and he'll keep me on track as well. So let's start off with the thought of the day. So it's not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent, but the one most adaptable to change. So this is good old Charles Darwin. We think this is really important to really concentrate on in this particular period. It's about our adaptability. And we're going to see that in the business world. You know, it's not going to always be the big businesses or the ones that are perhaps the most cutting edge that are going to get through this. It's just the ones that can cope with the changes that are coming every single day that we're seeing, and who can continue to be adaptable. And part of being adaptable to change is also resilience. And it's those businesses that have got this resilience built in that are going to really cope with what's coming up in the next few months. And you know, that could be things like coming off furlough. It could be other changes that are coming from the government, you know, coming in and out of lockdown. It's something that we really do value as small businesses, is that we are agile. And it does give us a cutting edge over some of those bigger companies that are more like trying to turn around a steamship. And we're a little bit more like a little dinghy. So if the wind changes, we can swing around really quite fast and go off in a separate tack. Those big steamships take hours to get turned around. And I think that's something that we can really celebrate as small business owners, is our ability to be agile. And it's something that we really want to help to support you to be able to keep that adaptability in your business, not to get so worn out by all of these changes that we stop being agile and adaptable. So I want you to really hold on to that thought for the day through the next 45 minutes. So our agenda for today, before we get too stuck in, I just want to quickly let you know what we're going to do. We're going to talk about the lessons that we've had from lockdown so far. We're going to talk about choosing to make change rather than it being foisted upon us. We're going to talk about the fundamentals of adapting your business. We're going to look into leaving no stone unturned. Then we're going to put it all together into a cohesive plan, give you some next steps, then talk to you about the support that's available from us and some of those things that we can do to help you. And then we've got a bit of time at the end for our Q&A. So before we get really stuck into that lessons from lockdown bit, I just want to remind you that we have a usual disclaimer. The information that we give in an educational webinar is just general in nature. It's no substitute for getting really tailored advice or specific advice to your personal needs. So if there's something that's going on in your business that's a little bit different, it's always worth just picking up the phone, having one of our complimentary reviews that we'll do for clients and non-clients alike. We're very happy to talk to people for 15 minutes for free, just to talk through anything you've got that's really specific. So just to be aware that this general advice might not always be appropriate to your situation. Okay, now that we've got that bit out of the way, I want to put a bit of context around what we mean by the new business as usual. So before COVID-19 and lockdown, we had the old business as usual. Then we had this crisis unfolding, and most countries and many businesses went into lockdown and entered what we're calling business unusual. Many businesses went into complete hibernation. Some people just shut down whole departments. And this is what we were referring to as the business continuity phase. So just finding a way to get through that period, but really in a hibernation type of phase. Then there's been an easing of some lockdown restrictions, and we're starting to see some of those final businesses being allowed to trade again. I'm thinking of things like facialists who are really right at the end of the personal care business. They've now been allowed to continue to do facials and threading, and that kind of service is now allowed. So we've had this sort of phased time coming out of lockdown, and at this point business unusual does continue as many people are still restricted in some of their movements. It's a time now for reinventing how we operate our businesses. So as these restrictions continue to ease, we're not really yet out of business unusual. There are still customers who are wary about traveling. Some people are really still reluctant to spend money because they're feeling very anxious about where the next pennies are going to come from, or people who've been actually really unwell during lockdown and are still getting their health back. At some point in the future, maybe like 6 to 12 months, I think, we're going to enter a new business as usual phase. So what we need to do is make our plans now. In the words of Charles Darwin, we need to be the most adaptable to change so that we survive. Everyone's got unique lessons that they've learned in lockdown. Lots of businesses have really been innovative. They've been re-engineering things, they've been adapting, widening their lanes, and they've found viability in these strange times. We've adapted by running webinars for our clients. We've been delivering meetings online. So here at Panthera, we just packed up all of our desks before lockdown, and we just changed the way that our business was done. We've also re-engineered the way that we operate to make sure that remote working continues to be something that we can manage. So for example, what we've done here is we have a team tea break every day at 10:30. It's a time for all the team to get together and to just share what's going on with them in their work, but also what's happening in their personal lives. And in that way, it's helped us to manage our team, something very different to how we were being managed when we were all in the same space. We've widened our lane by adding new services, such as helping our business clients with business recovery planning, which is a bit like business planning on steroids. It's like really, it's a fabulous way of doing your plan, and it helps SMEs to recover from the impact that COVID's had on their specific business, and then establish a new business as usual, whatever that might look like for them. We've also seen clients with things like an events business that's all been done face-to-face, and they've had to completely pivot. I mean, that's a phrase that we've heard a lot of, isn't it? They've completely pivoted their business to running online events, or even hybrid events now, where there's some bit of face-to-face event work going on, but the majority of it's being online. And those events companies that we work with, they've become specialists in how to use the online event space for businesses, so that those businesses haven't had to go and learn a whole new load of technology. They've brought that into the businesses for them. So that's the sort of way that some clients have been adapting to lockdown. Another business I can think of is a recruitment business that we have as a client, and they've created a whole new offering. So they've widened their lane, a whole new offering about outplacement. So that's when people are making a number of their staff redundant. So the company then offers those members of staff an outplacement service to help them to make that transition from the business that they're in into something else. And I've seen joint ventures coming together out of something like that. So lots of businesses have come together to produce a new service in order to find a way to survive and be adaptable during this period. As well as learning that we need to adapt, innovate, re-engineer and widen our lanes, we've also had some really other interesting lessons that we've learned from lockdown. So Here's my sort of top 5. My first one is, when forced upon us, change can happen really fast. I've seen this in loads of businesses. People have said, I tell you what, maybe next year we'll make this change in our business. It'll be better for our processes. It'll be really nice. And it takes a bit of time to get there. Well, lockdown kind of shrunk the time frame down really heavily. As an example, in our business, we had been talking about going paperless, and we were in the process of going paperless at the beginning of this year, and we had to really do that very quickly in order to make remote working work for us. It meant that project was sort of put up to the top of the list, and Pip in our offices, those of you who know Pip, has worked really, really hard on making that a possibility for us, and it's made a really fast change in our business. So that's one of the things that lockdown has really taught us, is that when we really put our minds to it, we can make really quick changes that make a big impact in our business. The other thing we've learned is that working from home is great for some people and it really sucks for others, for both businesses and for teams. And I think you'll find, you may feel this yourselves, that for people that perhaps have children under school age, if you've got toddlers and you're trying to look after a toddler and run a business, that's a really hard place to be. There are some businesses where everything has to be done face to face, and I'm thinking of people like, we've got a client that's a facialist. You just can't do a facial on Zoom. It just doesn't work. So for those people, it's been really quite sucky. For other people, actually taking an hour that used to be spent on a commute and giving that back to them, so either time they can spend with their family or time they can spend relaxing, has been a real boon, and it's made them really think about how they might run their lives when we are able to go back to the offices. And I'm hearing lots and lots of businesses saying they're going towards a hybrid model where people will go into the office a few days a week, but also working from home is much more of an option for them. Technology can be your friend if you're agile, or your enemy if you're slow to adopt. I think that's one of our really big learnings from lockdown, is that people who were already up on how to use Zoom, how to use video, how to run webinars, just could go flying straight into offering their services that way. If you didn't have any of that embedded already, and you were slow to learn how to use, for example, how to put a webinar out, by the time you got there, other people had already been there before you. So that pace of change in technology has really sped up. And I think if you're not able to keep up with technology, it's going to really affect your business. This one has been really close to my heart. So this is number 4. A war chest of cash is not a nice to have, it's a must have. It's something that you'll probably have heard from your accountants, is how much have you got put aside? What's your run rate? So how much does it cost you to run your business on a monthly basis to cover your overheads? So if you're not making any money, how much money do you need to get through for the next 3-6 months? And then we look at your savings accounts, and we very often say it's not enough. You don't have enough put aside. Now, we were really, really lucky during the beginning of this crisis that we got loans and grants out to people from the government quite quickly. It didn't always feel like it was quite quick at the time, and I know there were some people with CBILS who really didn't have that experience, but overall across our client base we found that most people did get the money that they needed when they needed it. Now, I don't think that's going to happen again, and if we do go into another lockdown, I think businesses are going to really need to rely much more heavily on their own savings, and that's what we mean by this war chest. It's having enough money put aside to get you through a tough period. And I think what we're going to have learned from lockdown is that is going to become a much more important part of small businesses' policies and process, is to really focus on how much do we need to have put aside and actually doing it. And the last one is, when you think you've not enough time to plan, it's when you really need to make a plan. And I think I've seen that with a lot of business owners, where their businesses have been very busy, and we've sort of seen this split across lockdown, with people that have been on furlough and they've not been able to do any work at all, and then other businesses that have been busier than they've ever been in the past. And it's those ones who felt that they had so much to do that they didn't have any time to sit down and make a plan. And what I always encourage people to do when they're feeling like that sort of panicky slightly anxious feeling that there's just so much on my to-do list, is just to sit back and say, right, the first thing I've got to do is make a plan. If it's a plan for the day, a plan for the week, a plan for the month, just enough to work out how you're going to prioritize the rest of your time. Because from a place where you're doing all the time, you're never going to be able to make good strategic decisions. So I think that's one of the really important learnings from lockdown, is about making time to make plans. So we know we need to change and adapt, but is that actually going to be enough? So think about those things you changed as a result of the lockdown. And I think if you've got your workbook, if you've already printed that out in front of you, or if you're just taking some notes, now's a really good time just to sit back for a second and think about the things that you did change as a result of lockdown. Were some of those changes things you'd considered previously but never got quite around to doing? And it would be worth, just if you're making your list, saying, okay, here are the things that we did change. Were they already on my list? Or alternatively, were they things that had to pop up because we were adapting to something that we hadn't ever expected to happen? Or alternatively, did you make some changes and perhaps then revert back to the old way of doing things? So did you just make changes for that period and then say, let's go back to what we were doing before? To give you a personal example of that from my side, so I made a lot of video content just at the beginning of lockdown because there was so much information coming from HMRC that people were getting really concerned about. So we had quite a loud voice on social media via video to try and get that data out to people. And then as HMRC's changes slowed down, we slowed down on producing video content at the same time because there was less urgent stuff to be dealt with. So that's one of the changes that I've made that sort of reverted back. But it's something that even before lockdown I said I wanted to do more videos, so it's something that I want to put in into my plan as something we continue to do, because it was a good learning from lockdown and it would be good to continue with. So if you can think of something like that, 1 or 2 items, it would just be nice to get those jotted down, because we're going to come back to that as we go through this webinar. It's good to recognise that change is not easy, but it is still essential, even in the current environment. And it is going to take some work from people. And I know one of the things I've been talking about over the last couple of weeks is that business owners are finding it hard to find the energy to make changes now. They've done a lot of this already, and there's not an obvious end to the process that we're just in at the moment. So sometimes making more change now feels really difficult. That's a good time to reach out to your peers, to any groups that you might be a member of that supports you as a business owner, and just say, could we maybe have some accountability together? Could you support me in making these changes that I really want to make in my business, but I'm finding it hard to find the energy to do that? What I'm going to do now is share with you 4 mindsets that's going to help to make change easier for you in the future. And I found these really helpful for myself, so I hope that they'll be helpful for you too. So one of my favourite mindsets, we use this an awful lot in Panthera, is called ORBED. In times of crisis, we've got 2 choices about how we can respond. We can act above the line or we can act below the line. Below the line actions, I have to put these other way around. Above the line actions would go something like this. So we're talking about taking ownership, that we can and we must do something to protect ourselves and our business, even if that might mean closing down a part of your business or looking into insolvency. It's taking the ownership to say, this is my business and I have to take control of it. We can also recognise that we're accountable to our team and our customers and also our suppliers at their time of greatest need. So it's recognising that we sit within an ecosystem as a small business owner, and that we do need to be accountable to the people that are involved in that ecosystem. We also take responsibility for protecting ourselves, our team, our customers and our business from the difficult times that we're in. And those are the areas that we want to be in. We want to be acting above the line. If we act below the line, we're talking about blaming someone else for bringing the virus into our country, making excuses why there's nothing we can do about it, going into denial that there's even an issue, and in doing so we put ourselves and our team and probably our business at greater risk. So we really want to be working above the line in everything that we're doing. The fundamental mindset here is that we have a choice, and we must not take on a victim mindset in these times. It's really easy to slip below the line when we get tired when we're feeling worn out, when we've had a really tough week, and it's good to just catch yourself. If you can hear yourself using some of those blame, excuse type of words, either in our heads or even when we're talking to customers, it's not my fault, it's the virus that did it. It's a good time just to pull yourself up and say, actually, this is really an unhelpful place to try and work from. I really need to bring myself up above the line so that I can continue to make the right changes in the business. So that's or bed, and as you can see, it's or and bed, and it's really useful for us to keep that in our heads. Above the line is a victor mentality, and below the line is the victim mentality. So when we're talking about things that are above the line, you're going to hear phrases like I'm going to help you with this, I did this. It's a sort of being the adult type of way of talking. And we also say, see it, do it, own it. So if you see there's a problem, do something about it and own it, take that accountability. If you're working below the line, an indicator of that is you're saying you did this, it's your fault. It's a childlike place to be from, so you feel out of control from there. And the tendency is to just ignore the problem, hope it goes away, see what happens. It's that it's not my job type of mentality without any initiative. So the next mindset I want to share with you is the 5 A's of change. You can see this up on the screen here. Now, we know we need to make some changes. The 5 A's of change help us identify what the steps are that we need to make those changes. So remember, we've already said change is not easy. We know it's a tough time at the moment, and it is really okay to feel apprehensive about this stuff. So the first step is to be aware of what needs to change, why it needs to change, and what will happen if things don't change. The next step is to accept that you must change. It's likely that the COVID-19 crisis has raised your awareness and acceptance that change is necessary. I am still seeing some people who are trying to ignore it and just saying there's nothing I need to change, this is how my business is. We'll just do exactly what we were doing beforehand, and that's just not going to change. That's not going to work, because the world has changed an awful lot over the last 6 months. So accepting that there's change to come is really important. The third step is to take action. Without action, nothing is going to change, and your business will struggle to recover. Documenting what you're going to do in a recovery plan is the first step towards taking action. And we find that once you start taking action, a lot of people feel a lot better about the situation they're in, because you start to take away that helplessness. And by taking some actions, and that starts with writing a plan, you feel like you're taking some control back. The fourth step is accountability. Having someone independent holding you to account will ensure that you take the required action that you need to change. And that's a really important step, and it's often the one that gets missed out, I find. So we'll often see business owners going through without any problem step 1, step 2, 3, making some actions, normally around making a plan. And then the plan gets written on a piece of paper and put in the bottom drawer and doesn't come out again for 4, 5, 6 months maybe. And that's where it really falls down, because without the accountability, the actions drop off and then the change doesn't get made. So it's really important we focus on that accountability bit. And finally, it's really important to reinforce change by acknowledging and celebrating your successes. Now, if you're in my Dawn group, that's the Didcot and Abingdon Women's Networking Group, you'll know that I annoy people slightly by insisting everyone brings success to the table at the end of their 1 minute. You do it for the first time and think, oh, this is a bit awkward. And over time, people get to really enjoy sharing their successes with one another, both to be able to say, this is what I've done, and to get the cheers about it. But it's also really nice to hear other people's success, because the more you hear of other people's successes, the more you look for them in your own lives. And it's a very nice way of rounding out these 5 A's, because if we don't give ourselves praise for even the smallest successes that we see whilst we're making changes, we then find it very hard to feel motivated to continue to make change. So those very, even if they're tiny little successes, it's really important that we continue to celebrate those, because it helps us keep our resilience up. So we're going to talk next, this is our third mindset, about the Atomic Habits mindset, which is based on the book called Atomic Habits by James Clear, and it's a really great read. In summary, Outcome-based habits are less likely to be successful as we're not recognizing the need to change our identity. The habits will either not stick as we revert back to our old identity, or we'll give up those habits once we reach the outcome. So that's what we see here by the little outcome-based habits picture that you can see on the screen. It's where we are really thinking about what we want to achieve and just changing what we do based on that without really changing who we are. The way that we want to work is by focusing on the identity-based habits. So if we focus on who we need to be, so that's either our personal identity or our business's identity, and how that needs to change, we form habits that are consistent with that identity, and the outcomes will then flow more naturally as we simply live into our identity. And when I talk about our identity, sometimes people find it sort of difficult to know what their business identity actually is. And if we're coming up against that with clients, we often say, well, let's do a bit of work on our core values. So really understanding what sits at the heart of our business, what is very important to us, because that really tells us what our identity is. At Panthera, we have 6 core values that we have around the office normally. You can see some of them are up behind me. And we've got things like, one of our core values is to make it clear. So making sure that we're really able to talk clearly with our clients and the people that we come into interactions with, so that they understand, so that we can help to educate them. And that's part of what we're doing today. So understanding what our identity is then helps us to make habits around how do we communicate with people, how often do we do that. Well, it's all comes from making sure that we're making things clear to people. So that's the sort of way that we need to be thinking about our habits. It's identity based, not outcome based. And this is the 4th model that I've got to share with you, which is the rubber band model. The rubber band model comes from the decision book, 50 Models for Strategic Thinking. And it's about when you're making a decision between 2 different options that you've got. You imagine that there are 2 rubber bands that are around you, just like the man on the slide you can see. One is holding you back and the other one is pulling you forward. Both the rubber bands are equally important. And I think it's that bit that I really like to focus on here. They are equally important. So some people, depending on their mindset, will just see the one that's pulling them back, and the other ones will only focus on the ones pulling them forward. But everybody does have these 2 rubber bands. So one representing that careful consideration, doing things step by step with great process and identifying and mitigating risks. You might not be surprised to find us accountants have a tendency to focus on this one. It's sort of built into our DNA. And the other one that pulls you forward represents the need for change, progression, and finding better ways to reach your goals. By really sitting down and having a look at what's holding you and what's pulling you, the result will be a carefully considered way forward. And you need to consider both of those things together, so that you don't go springing forward so fast that you come pinging back, or alternatively that you don't make change so slowly that you're not really getting to where you need to be. So this model helps you to really focus on what those 2 rubber bands are. The rubber band model is also useful if you've got 2 business owners or 2 people working on a joint venture, for example, who've got different views on what change looks like. We often see this in teams. There's often somebody that is much more forward focused, all about the pulling forward, and another one that really wants to build process and just to sit back and look at the risks. One may be wanting to dot all the I's and cross the T's and manage the risks and create robust processes, and the other might want to move forward to capture new opportunities for innovation, adaptation, re-engineering, but may not have considered all of the risks. And this model helps us bring these divergent and important viewpoints together to find consensus as to the best way forward. And that's a really good model for dealing with the sort of changes that we're seeing right now. So, for example, you might be thinking, do I ditch this type of service that I offer to people and instead go over here and offer a totally different service to the same client base? And you may be feeling like we could just do that pivot completely, make the change. Next week, we're just offering this different service. But what you really want to consider is, what's the process? What are the risks in there? How do we do that on a step-by-step process to get to the offering that we want to have, but without creating too much risk in the business? So now that we know what adaptation is, we've got innovation, re-engineering, reinvention or widening our lane, and we've got 4 powerful mindsets to help us with that change. So that's Orbed, the 5 A's of change, atomic habits, and the rubber band model. What are the fundamentals we need in place to adapt our business? So here we are, we've got them up on the screen. The first one I want to talk about is to take a team approach. It's really likely that your team will have many ideas as to how you can improve your business. Make sure you involve them. And when I'm talking about a team, I know that lots of our clients are one-man bands, or maybe just have one other person in the business with them that works with them. Don't forget that your team is not just those people that you employ. They may be subcontractors that you work alongside. They may be people in a joint venture with you. They could also be your suppliers. So very often we'll find that actually your supply chain is a really important place to talk about what changes you could make, because they may have ideas that they've seen from other customers that they have, or they can see some of the process that's coming into your business and they can actually tweak that really effectively. So having conversations with other people who make up your wider team, and that might also be your team back home, that might be in your personal life, there may be some really great ideas in there that you haven't come across because you haven't implemented a team approach. So taking a team approach is really important. Make a plan. So during lockdown, it's likely you thought of loads of ideas of how to adapt. Some of those you might have managed to scribble down. Some of them might have come to you at an inopportune time and you haven't really managed to get them all formulated really clearly. If there's more than one owner of the business, there's a risk that some of you've got some plans over here and somebody else has got plans or ideas over there and they've not been brought together. So making a plan together with the other people in your team ensures that you get alignment and clarity on what the new business direction should be. Budgets. So a revised personal budget with trimmed costs helps reduce the cash flow strain on your business. It's really likely just now that some of the things you used to spend money on, you're just not spending on. And we've seen some reports coming through. I saw one, I think, last week about high earners in America who are spending something like 50% less on their sort of vacation costs that they used to spend. There's thousands and thousands of pounds that would have normally have been spent on eating out or entertaining that just doesn't need to be spent anymore. And so if you can rewrite your personal budget, you can work out what you actually do need to have in dividends or perhaps even in salary out of your business and really scale that down so that your business budget can also be rewritten. And that will help you to be able to see where else there are costs that can be trimmed. For example, there are lots of businesses who aren't paying rent right now who would have had an office in the past. So you can have another look at your budget and trim some of those costs out. It's really important that we can establish a minimum viable weekly sales number or a monthly sales number so that you know what you need to survive through this crisis and anything that could change going forward. And what we talk about there is your run rate, so what your absolute minimum overhead is, and therefore how many sales you need to make in order to make sure that you're covering just keeping the business running. We think you should also complete a risk analysis. So what we mean by there is going in to have a look at the risks that are in your business. I'm not talking health and safety risks, although you do need to do that if you're going to be returning to an office, for example, or you've got interaction with customers. But I mean on a more general basis, a risk assessment of your whole business. So, for example, an inability to pay debts as they fall due could be something that's coming up to bite you, and you won't know about that without having a look at what the risk is in there. Something like having poor reporting systems is a risk in your business. If you don't know what your cash flow forecast is going to look like, if you don't know what your turnover is right now because you don't have a system that allows you to report really easily, then that is a risk in your business. And those businesses that are struggling the most that we're seeing are the ones that don't have up-to-date reporting systems that can show them what's going on a day-to-day basis. A risk analysis helps you identify strategies to mitigate those risks, and we can help you get that sorted out. My next one is do pre-work. Pre-work is a phrase that we use a lot in the business, but it might not be so familiar to some of the people on this webinar. So pre-work prior to a planning meeting ensures your meeting is not one of discovery. And what we mean by that is that you don't waste time catching up on information in your meeting that you could have done as pre-work. We'll talk a bit more about how pre-work fits into our business recovery plan, but it's worth using as a concept in general. When you're having a meeting with a client, for example, are you actually doing your pre-work in your meeting? And could you have had that discovery done by a questionnaire or a short email exchange before you have your actual meeting to pull all the data that you need, so that in the meeting you're really getting as much value out of it as you possibly can? Have somebody independent to help you through a process. So accountability makes sure that you get things done. And I think right now it's really, really important. Trying to rely on your own motivation at the moment is very tough. We don't have a lot of it in spare, tucked away for later. Most people's motivation is being used up right to the top of their resilience every single day. So having somebody else to help you get things done is really important. Everybody's super busy right now. The important things that aren't urgent, like planning, just don't get done. Independent accountability also gives you the ability to combine your expertise with someone else's so that you come up with an even better plan. And we really like that 2 heads equals 4 kind of approach. The more brain power you can get onto a problem, the better your outcomes are going to be. The most important, So the most important aspect of planning is to understand the difference between governance and management. So governance is often referred to as working on the business, whereas management is working in the business. The governance role is accountable to the shareholders in the company, and even if the shareholders are you, the governance role, if you're doing that in your business, is still, it's important to see yourself as the owner separately from any other roles that you do have in the business, and we're going to come on to that in just a second. And the directors have to set the vision and determine the strategies to get to the to get to where we're trying to get to as a governance role. The management role is accountable to the board of directors to implement those strategies and achieve the vision that's been set. Now, in very small businesses, we tend to see both the governance role and the management role being done by the same person, but it's really helpful just to try and split those 2 out in your minds. Your business recovery plan is a combination of working on your business and in your business, as you need to get right down into the operational areas of the business to find savings, efficiencies, adaptations, improvements. All of that is part of that management role. But when you're making a plan like this, we're working with both sides. So you can have a look at on that slide, working on versus in your business. And we've got that governing up at the top, and you've got the managing down below. You've all got copies of these slides either in your workbook, or we'll send them out afterwards if you need them. So I would really have a really good look at this slide if you've got a bit of time to go into what managing in action looks like and what governing in action looks like, because I think it's really helpful to make that distinction. So this is a mindset that we use again a lot when we're helping clients, and it's called the 10 hats. And you can see on this slide, it's the 10 departments in every business. And when I say every business, I mean every business. It doesn't matter how tiny it is or when it started, there still needs to be all of these 10 hats. It may just be that you're the one person wearing all the hats at the same time. Your plan now needs to identify the current risks, opportunities for improvement, new goals, and actions you need to take for each of the 10 departments. For example, you may have discovered that customers are slow to pay you now. The risk here is that you may not be able to pay your debts as they fall due. So your finance department goal might be to reduce your debtor days, and your debtor days is the time it takes on average to get your customers to pay you. And if you set a goal, for example, to reduce those by 10 days, and in doing so free up to something like £15,000 of cash, for example, then the actions you need to take might include reviewing your terms of trade, so making sure that you've got the right terms out there with your customers, better reporting of your debtors, so making sure that you can have a look at that on a weekly basis, and then contracting to an external credit controller. And that's the sort of level of detail you need to get down to for each of these 10 departments. And you can see what these 10 departments are here. So these are the governance departments that we just saw on the slide before. So the shareholders and the directors, It's all about setting the direction of the business. And then down below, above the line and below the line isn't the same as in Orbed here. It's not that the ones below the line aren't good. It's just a split between your governance and your operational part. So this is all operational down here. We've got a leadership department, which is what makes things happen effectively. And then we've got your product or service development. So that's, you know, coming up with what it is that you sell to your customers. You've got operations and the delivery of either the services or the goods that you sell. We've then got a sales department, a marketing department, a finance department, your admin, your technology department, and your human resources department. Now, what I often hear from clients is like, well, it's just me in the business. I don't have an HR department. I don't even need one. Well, actually, you do need some kind of strategy around simple things like, if I'm the only person in the team and I want to take a holiday, when is that going to happen? How am I going to keep myself motivated? How do I know if I'm doing a good job? So that all would fall under your HR department, and it would also deal with contractors. So even if it's only you as an employee in your business, it's very likely that you're working with somebody else to deliver or to contract to, and that also would fall under that HR department. So one of the things I'd really like you to think about is how these 10 hats work in your business and who is wearing them. Once you've got that idea, you then need to drill down into making your plan based on each of these departments. We say here, leave no stone unturned. So unlike a normal business plan during business as usual, which is more strategic, it tends to be high level. In times of crisis like this, you need to be looking at all aspects of your business. So while you'll be working on your business when completing your plan, you need to get right down into the gunnels to find opportunities for savings or improvements. In other words, leave no stone unturned. And that's why we use this 10 hats mindset, because it will help you to not feel so overwhelmed by how many things that you need to check in on. You can go through department by department. So stones that you could look under. If we take that first, the new product or the service development department, what new products or services have you developed during the crisis, and how have customers responded to your innovation? What new products or services are you planning to launch? What break-even analysis have you completed for each? So how much of that thing do you have to sell to make it worthwhile doing, you know, to cover the basic costs? Will you discontinue any existing product or service lines, and why might that be? So you may, for example, right now, let's say you're in events, you might just say, I'm not doing any weddings. Just take it off the offering completely, because there's just too much uncertainty in when we're going to be able to make that really work. In what other ways will you pivot the business? For example, are you going to add additional after-sales services? Are you going to focus on mobile delivery? Is there a way that you can take your product online? And this would all come under that one hat of new product or service development. Let's take another department like marketing. In what ways have you virtualized your customer experience, and how have you marketed this? So as an example, we've seen things that used to be delivered, for example, like a proposal that used to be put into a proposal pack, printed off, put as bits of paper, posted out to clients. I've seen people create PDF versions of those beautiful, movable PDFs that look like a book and create a new proposal. How can you use those kind of changes in your business? How can you improve inbound digital lead generation? For example, how do you improve your website performance, your social media strategy? What sort of value have you got in the content that you're putting out? How have you virtualized your customer experience? How can you market that? How can you tell people about what you're doing there? What's your communication and support plan for key customers to maximize retention? So is it that you're having a weekly phone call with your top 10 customers because you just need to keep them really close to you? And then let's move over to your suppliers and your supply chain. What challenges have you experienced with product or service supply stability? So is it possible to get your product? Is it being shipped across the world and it's been really slowed down? How are you going to mitigate those risks? For example, I've seen people who have been in manufacturing of clothes that's been coming over from China, and they've changed to a more expensive but UK-based supplier so that they can continue their supply chain. Even though they've had to put the prices up, being able to deliver is more important than keeping a low price but saying it's going to take 6 weeks. What changes have you made to purchasing policies to prevent overspending on stock or overheads? Is there a cheaper way of getting the things that you need? What contingency plans have you put in place to ensure an alternative supply? So, for example, my client that couldn't get their things supplied over from China, they found a different supplier. But maybe you should have 2 options there in case of issues with one of your suppliers not having done any of this planning and they go bust at an inopportune time. Can you quickly switch to a different supplier and continue to provide what you're selling? What critical changes do you need to make to your general terms of trade to minimise losses from customer insolvency? For example, asking for shorter payment terms, having credit checks up front with some of your customers so that you know what they can afford, setting credit limits, asking for personal guarantees, maybe asking for deposits up front. This is all about protecting your own cash flow so that you don't end up, because of the length of your debtor days, with somebody going bust after 60 days of owing you money and you have no way of getting that cash back into your business. So it's looking at that kind of protection side for you. That's just 3 of those departments with a very quick look. And that's the sort of thing that in a business continuity plan, you'd go through all of those 10 departments and really go into overturning all those stones, seeing what's under there, looking at what your opportunities there might be. So we would then pull that together into a complete plan. Depending on your circumstances, your recovery plan should include a personal budget, and we like to start with that. How much does the business need to provide to me, so that we can then work out what it needs to be making through a period of crisis. We also think you should have a risk register. That could be a really big chunky document for a large company, or it could be a single page for a smaller company with just the top level risks that you need to mitigate. Your business recovery plan, and that would look like the answers to those questions that I was just showing you in the slide before. A business forecast, so knowing what we've decided we're going to change, what's going to happen over the next 6-12 months, probably 6 months just now. I think trying to forecast out further than that is really quite rocky, and we're tending to look at forecasts over a shorter period. An updated organisation chart if you've got a team of people, and especially if you're applying for finance. So keeping that organisation chart up to date really helps you to be able to present the best picture of your business to potential lenders. And then the 6th thing on the list, if that's what you're doing, is a finance application. We're talking about that now because we've been through a round of bounce back loans and CBILS, and people are going to start thinking about making repayments on that at the beginning of next year, maybe March, April, May time. And it may be that additional finance is going to be required at that time because there's more that needs to be covered. So it's really important that if you think you're going to be requesting finance, and you're going to know that after you've made your plan as to what's going to happen, that you're already prepared with this kind of information so that when you do need to apply for your finance, you can just send it all off and it's not a 3-week project to pull all this stuff together. And the reason we care about this, the outcomes of a completed plan would be you've got some certainty and an alignment about how to adapt your business to survive and to thrive, that you reduce the cash flow strain on your business by reviewing your personal spending, so that takes some of the stress out of have we got enough money this month, giving you some clarity about things like your minimum viable weekly sales number or the key projects that you need to get done in the next 90 days so that you know what is going to be enough. And it takes some of that sleepless night sort of worry out of have we done enough? Have we got enough sales in the pipeline? If you know what that number is, it helps you to sleep at night. It'll give you a complete package to share with your financiers like we just talked about, and it'll give you peace of mind and the ability to sleep at night knowing that you've got a plan in place. You might not need to do all of those things I just listed. For example, you've maybe got enough cash flow right now so you don't need to apply for finance, and if you don't have a team you might not need to update your org chart. What is important is that you establish what is right for you right now. What combination of those items do you think you'll need? and who is going to do them. And that's something I just want you to think about whilst we go through the next bit of the slides, is what is it that you specifically need for your business in order that you can sleep at night. So now it's time for you to consider your next steps. Here's a really useful model to follow to ensure you get the results you want and you need. So we start with the power of an idea is in its implementation. It's brilliant to have these ideas. It's great that you're here on the webinar. I so appreciate you giving the time to listen to this. But if you go away from this webinar, go straight into business as usual, and don't come back to any of the things we've talked about, you haven't really got any value from it. So the really important thing is that we find something to implement off the back of this. So we start with decisions. You'll have literally hundreds of ideas in your head about what options you have in all aspects of your business. By documenting these ideas in a plan, you're making positive decisions about what you will and what you won't do, remembering that what you can say yes to is totally defined by what you say no to. I think lots of people in business find this quite difficult. We end up, because we really like to help people, you know, we go into business to help people generally. And so saying yes to everything can often be part of the way that we work, but actually it doesn't give us any time to do the things that we have to do. So sometimes the plan is more about getting a clear focus on the few things that you need to do that are going to make the most impact. So your decision right now could just be, I'm going to commit to making a plan. And that would be enough. That's a decision made. And if you've made a commitment to yourself to do that, that's going to take you up onto your next step. So once we've got a decision, we do actions. The plan will include the actions you need to take to adapt your business. Detailed step-by-step actions that minimize risks and maximize opportunities. Likewise, the action you commit to right now could be to do your business recovery plan yourself and then have us to review it or have us involved throughout the process, depending on what's applicable for your business. Accountability. So in order to get results, it's usually not enough to make decisions and agree on actions. If you're anything like me, you need someone to hold you to account to complete those actions. Now, I do that by being a member of a goal setting team, and I'm held accountable to my goals every single month, and I have to stand up and say if I've done them or not, and I find that really effective. I'm deadline driven. I'm also very driven by fitting into a group, so if I haven't done my goals and I let people down, I feel terrible. So that accountability works really well for me. It's finding the accountability that works for you. If you think back to your school days, if you didn't have a teacher holding you to account for doing your homework, would you have done it? Or think about your personal trainer. If you didn't commit to the sessions with your trainer, would you go as often? We're here to help make sure you not only complete the plan, but that you also get the results that you want from doing that work. My aim is to help you take what you've learnt today and implement some positive change in your business. And I don't really mind what the first steps are, even if they're really baby steps. It's just wonderful if I can see you make some positive steps forward. So I love to hear any feedback. If you've gone off and worked on your plan yourself, just you know, to either see something on social media or to drop me a note just to say I did it, I made a start. It's the most wonderful feeling. So please share all of those kind of steps. I think it's really helpful to share them out with the wider world. It helps other business owners to see that there are baby steps that they can take, and to sort of give them that motivation to do it along with you. The thing I would say is doing nothing is not an option. Doing what you've always done is unlikely to give you the same results as you've had in the past. And I think it's easy for us to fall back into doing a lot in the business and thinking, well, it was fine this time last year to do this thing that I'm doing, so I'll just continue doing that. It's just a different environment now. You can't do those things as you did in the past and expect to get the same results. You need to remember to focus on what you can do as opposed to worrying about what's out of your control. So let's remember that all bed model that we shared, staying above the line. And we're here for you, and we just want to help. So what is it that we can do to help you? Our recommended strategy is to complete a business recovery plan, and we've been receiving some really great feedback about how effective that process is. We've done it with a number of clients, and it's really helped them to either break through a bit of stagnation that they found in their business, or just to clarify in their minds what they need to do next. So if you haven't yet done a business recovery plan, now's the time to do it right now, I think. in the next couple of weeks, as it's going to form a great foundation from which to build your cash flow improvement strategy. It's also going to help with loan applications and to know what to do next. So I've got some options up here on the screen. You don't have to do the paid for options. They are there available for those people that feel that they want some hand holding, but we have also got some free options there for you, and you can take that away and get started on straight away. So the first option, meet with us online, and then we do the plan together. Richard's just done one of these with one of our clients last week, and teamed up with another member of my staff. So they had 2 accountants working on their business for 2 sessions together, and we tend to break it up into 2 to 3 hour sessions. You can do it as a 1 4-hour session if you like to, but we find sometimes people feel a bit frazzled by how much thinking they're doing, and so breaking up gives you a bit of thinking time in between so they can come back afresh. We do some in-depth pre-work up front, so we send that out to clients, and I won't lie, it is in-depth. It does take some time. I did it on my business. It took me about 3 to 4 hours, but it was really really thought-provoking. It was similar to those questions that we saw on the screen when we were talking about looking under the stones, and it just gets your brain really ticking through. I think it's a brilliant piece of pre-work, and then we use that completed pre-work to guide us through the plan and set goals for each of your departments, and that ensures you've got a detailed and well thought out plan to give your business the best chance of recovery. Our second option is to meet with us online for the business recovery planning session, just like we talked about, and then also work to prepare an updated cash flow forecast for a finance application. That's a bigger piece of work, and it means quite a few more meetings. It's quite meaty, but it really gets you where you need to be for a finance application. The third option is a complementary business recovery review. So what we do is we send out a business recovery action list for you to complete. And that's like a condensed down version of the plan. And it suits those of you who maybe have a smaller business and who don't require a comprehensive business recovery plan. Once you've completed the action plan, we schedule a 15-minute call with somebody from the Panthera team to review your plan and to set some next steps. And it's a really good option for those of you in a smaller business who don't want to commit to spending anything just now, but do want just that little bit of input from us to say, have you thought about this? You could move it on this way. The risk with it is that with everything else going on right now, you just might not get around to doing it at all. And then the fourth option is if you just don't know what the best thing to do next is, you're not sure if you want to do a plan, you've got something that you want to just discuss, we recommend a complimentary meeting, and we can talk about your goals, your current problems and challenges. Again, that's free, it's about 15 to 20 minutes, and then we can agree on the best way forward to support you with exactly what you need in your business. If you're going to need to obtain business funding, I believe it's vital that you prepare a cash flow forecast, and I would say that as well as if you're looking for funding, but also if you've already obtained funding, so that might be a bounce back loan or a CBILS loan, and you don't have a cash flow forecast, you need one. I'm not normally that adamant about things, but you do need to know how you're going to pay that loan back. It's not good enough to say, we'll get to May and there'll just be money in the account and it'll be fine. It won't be fine. That's not how you can run a business. And as business owners, we have a responsibility to either our team, those people that we employ, our customers, and our suppliers to make sure that we're running our businesses in a sustainable way. So making sure you've got a cash flow forecast in place is really important, and that might be in a small business something as simple as a spreadsheet that rolls out when the money's coming in, when the money's going out, and how much is going to be left in the end of at the end of the month in the bank going forward for the next 6 months. And if you have got that war chest already built up, you can probably do that quite quickly. If you're living hand to mouth and you're just managing to scrape through paying your bills at the end of the month, it's even more important that you sit down and you write that cash flow forecast now. So we know it may be difficult to commit to spending money right now. Part of the planning process will include an assessment as to how you can improve your profitability and cash flow, so there'll be a great return on investment from the process over time. The idea is that if you've got a good plan in place, the cost of putting that plan together will be covered by the savings that you make as a result of your plan. For the short term, we've also got payment options available. So please don't let cost be a barrier. If you know this is what you need in your business, but you're worried about how to pay for it, we have options available. We take card payments. There are lots of other things that we can do. So if you think that might be you, pick up the phone and talk to us. We can always find an option for people. We really want to make sure as many small businesses as possible survive this next period. We know that the benefits you'll get from these services are far greater than our fee, and most importantly, it's about helping you as quickly as possible and ensuring we're working with you to build a stronger, more resilient business. So I have spoken an awful lot. I know that we're a little bit tight on time, so I'm going to just ask Richard now if any questions popped up in the chat or he received through that we need to answer. So Richard, are you off mute now?
Yeah, so I've got a couple of questions that have come through. Just a reminder to everyone, there is the Q&A at the bottom. Just click that and then you can submit any questions if you would like to. But the first one that I've got is, I'm the only person in my business. Is it worth doing the 10 hats exercise?
Yeah, it's a really good question. It absolutely is. And I've done the 10 hats exercise with people with only themselves in the business as a sole trader. And the reason I say that it's worth doing is that if you, for example, are delivering and running your business, and you're also doing your own marketing and doing your IT, we can then, when we've worked out exactly what is being done in each of those departments, it's much easier to pick out some things, for example, to say, right, you're spending 5 hours a month on making sure that your backup has been done for your IT. Is that a good use of your time? How much would it cost to outsource it? And it's not necessarily about bringing somebody into the business to sit in the IT role. In a small business, very often, things like IT, marketing, even HR, are stuff that can be outsourced. How much would it cost to outsource? How much time would that free up? If that freed you up for 5 hours of sales calls, how much more money would come into your business? So it's about having that discussion. And that's why the 10 hats is so useful, because it helps you as a business owner see which hats you should be wearing and which hats would be better worn by somebody else.
Great, thank you. The second one I've got is, if my year end is in December, am I best to wait to do my plan in January?
No. Is the really straight answer to that. And it's very often one of those things that we see business owners, they get caught up with, when should I do my planning, to such an extent that they never do the planning. So it never feels like a perfect time to step away from your business and start to do plans. There is always something more urgent on your list, but it's not more important. And it's that thing, I sometimes share a quadrant about what's urgent, what's important, to help you to work out what tasks to do next. Planning is important, but sometimes it feels like it's not urgent. And the problem is, if you leave it until January, you're already 1 month into your new year, and it's going to take you a bit of time to do this. So by the time you get your plan out, you may be into month 2, month 3, you've already lost a quarter of the year, and the world will have changed so much by the time you get there that you're going to be rewriting your plan again. You need to do your plan now. I think this quarter, more than even right at the beginning of lockdown, because what we don't have coming is a whole load of government handouts. So those people that didn't make a plan in March, April, May, sort of could get away with it, because it was really very easy to get hold of funds to just pay your way through it, just cash flow roll it. That's not going to happen again. So what's really important right now is that you've got that plan in place, so you know where the dip in income comes from, and you either work out how to make more sales to cover it or cut your overheads to get through it, but that you know when the cash is going to run out, so that you can avoid that happening. Because the cash in your business only runs out once. You can make a loss over a number of periods and get away with it if you've got the right cash flow. You run out of cash once, your business goes down the drain. It is simple as that. And so if you don't have your cash flow planning in place right now to work out how you get through to January, you might not even get to January in order to make the plan. So I know that sounds a little bit harsh, but I think now is the time to be tough on ourselves and say, we have to step up as business owners. You can't mess around with this sort of stuff. There isn't more money coming. We're responsible for it. We need to get ourselves up above the line and make sure we've got those plans in place.
Great, thank you very much.
Was that everything,
Any
Richard?
further questions? No.
No? Okay, fantastic. So I'm just going to leave you with this parting thought. Even if you're on the right track, you'll get run over if you just sit there. It's so important to get this into your minds. You may have a really smart business. It may be going in the right direction, but if you're not continuing to make change and moving forward, you're going to get run over by either the people coming in behind you or your cash flow hitting you from the front. We have to keep on making these changes. It's hard to stay motivated. Reach out to people and get the support that you need in order to continue on this journey through the rest of this year, so that we come out stronger at the other end. And if I can give you one call to action that will make the value come from what you've just heard, it's to make a simple plan today. You don't have to do your whole plan today. Make a simple plan today. It might be committing to making that plan. And what I'd ask you to do, and I'm going to ask you to share this in the survey at the end, so really think about these things, is to commit to at least 3 actions you're going to take as a result of today's webinar. Write them down, give each of them an owner. So they may all belong to you, but you could be able to delegate those out in your team, and put a completion date on them. And I think that is that little bit that's really important. So I'm going to do X by such and such a date, or I'm going to get so and so to do X, and the date I need them to have that back to me is the end of the month. And then you've got some sort of plan that comes out of this. Remember, if you need our support, we are here for you. Pick up the phone, send us an email, find us on social media, and ask anything that you might want to ask about, because we are here to help. So thanks for making the time to attend the webinar. I'm aware I've run over by a few minutes, so I'm sorry for keeping you, but I think it's really important to get this stuff out to you guys. I really appreciate your time is very valuable right now. Please do complete the exit survey. It's going to pop up on your screen as soon as you leave the webinar, because it's going to help us to help you make sure that you can be held accountable to those things that you're going to commit to, those 3 commitments you're going to make. But it also lets us know how to make these webinars exactly the sort of content that you need to help yourselves as business owners right now. We'll make sure we get the right topics in place. We hope we've given you plenty of ideas to ponder and some clear next steps for you and your business. So I'm going to finish up there from me and Richard. Thank you so much for joining us today. Don't forget that we are now running these educational webinars every other Thursday lunchtime. So there's going to be a new webinar every other Thursday. I've got some really exciting content coming up. I can't wait to share some of these ideas with you. My next one is Know Your Numbers, which I think is going to be brilliant. It's really going to help you to know what numbers you need to know and how to get hold of those so that you can feel in control of your business. We've also got your personal budget. We've talked a lot about personal budgeting within this webinar, and so we're going to take a deep dive into what that personal budget looks like, what even a personal budget is, how to write one, and again there's going to be some options for you to do that yourselves or for us to support you in it, and we'll have some giveaways at the end from that as well. So please join us on those webinars, let people know about them. We want to get out to as many small businesses as we can. Thanks very much for your time, guys, and we hope to see you really soon.